And good morning to you. This is Eye on New Mexico. I'm Chris Ramirez, and guest hosting with me this morning is Caleb James. Now, we're doing something a little different. We had such a busy week of news, I thought we would take a step back and recap all of the headlines that you may have missed.
But first, we invited Elisa Turteltaub to be our guest for our first segment this morning. Elisa is the owner of the Nosh Jewish Deli in Nob Hill. Welcome, Elisa. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you
now,
for having me.
Elisa and her restaurant have been the victims of anti-Semitic vandalism recently. In fact, it's happened at least twice.
The Nosh Deli was defaced with threats and anti-Jewish slurs a couple weeks ago. Elisa and I met at Nosh to discuss it.
People are just disgusted. You know, they're disgusted that this is happening.
Another month.
Don't hide behind a postal sticker.
Another attack.
If you have such a problem, then show your face.
Nosh Deli owner Elisa Turteltaub faced more anti-Semitic vandalism on the front door of her Jewish deli this weekend. These postal stickers with anti-Jewish slurs showed up on her front door on Saturday.
I'm not going to be a victim, but it's a little unsettling.
And then this morning, Elisa says she found more stickers.
They've moved to outside, yes.
But this time it was much worse. Those stickers didn't stop at Elisa's front door. This time they were on parking meters and light poles all up and down a city block.
On this block, investigators found a half dozen of the labels scrawled with anti-Semitic slurs.
The same priority mail stickers
and then down
there, yes.
Turteltaub found the same type of sticker covered in anti-Semitic slurs and threats on her front door last month.
But it's obviously not
It's not random because it keeps happening.
And you know, Elisa, the one thing that I remember you saying over and over and over again is how shocked you were to see these words coming up. You hadn't seen them in a long time, this kind of anti-Semitic feeling.
Yes, that kike is a very old word, and it's just not something that's used frequently in today's, today and age.
I would imagine that knowing our community and how gracious New Mexico is, the intended purpose is actually having an opposite effect. I would imagine that people are coming into Nosh and saying, do you know what, I support you, I support the restaurant. Are you experiencing that?
A lot of that, and it's really nice to see the community come together, but also the Jewish community to come together and to people to embrace, Judaism, which I feel is important as a Jewish person that they are embracing that.
What have you seen over the past couple of weeks as folks have come into your restaurant and talked to you and comforted you and given you, some support? I mean, what kinds of things are they saying to you?
They're just very supportive. They think that it's just disgusting, to see such hate towards, a religion or a race or whatever it may be. In my case, it's the religion, and they just support the deli. They're happy that there's actually a Jewish deli in Albuquerque, and that not to give up, to just keep going on.
Are you from New Mexico?
No, I'm from Los Angeles.
You're from LA. So did you come to Albuquerque just to open this deli?
No. I've had several restaurants in New Mexico, East Mountains mostly.
And in your experience, have you ever had anything like this before? Have you had this kind of anti-Semitic vandalism occur in any of the other places that you've worked or owned?
Not at the other restaurants, but they weren't delicatessens. I had different concepts, and being Jewish wasn't, it didn't matter, I guess. It's not something I walk around and say, so to speak, but it wasn't the theme of the restaurant. The fact that it's a Jewish deli, it is what it is. It's a Jewish delicatessen.
I think it was the first time that we interviewed, because this happened multiple times to Elisa's business, this kind of vandalism. The first time we interviewed, which was not the story that you just saw, but a story before, I remember you mentioning to me, back during your childhood, you'd experienced some anti-Semitism growing up and in your early adulthood. But you hadn't for such a long time. And I know that the vandalism surprised you, but did that resurgence of some anti-Semitism, something that you had experienced back, during your childhood, I mean, what did that bring up for you, having it come up again?
Well, anytime you encounter hate, it leaves a nasty taste in your mouth. Growing up, you know, I was called names, but nothing to this extent, and never. I mean, I haven't used the K word in quite some time. You know, I hadn't heard that in years and years and years. And now experiencing it in today's modern day, it just surprises me. It seems so archaic that people still are in that mindset.
Watching the stories that Caleb did with you, it was such a shock to me because, one, I'm from New Mexico and I've lived here for such a long time, and one of the things that we as the state embrace is our diverse culture. We have such a great blend of so many different people from so many walks of life, and that's always been one of my favorite parts about living in the state, is we are all so different. And it's never, I've never experienced this level of blatant racism until I watched these stories that Caleb did. And I think I was shocked. Were you just as shocked? The people who you've talked to, are they just as shocked as I was?
Everybody's shocked, especially at the level, the intensity that was used to, you know, describe their hatred towards, you know, Jewish faith. Again, the K word being used is not something that's you hear very often, and the nastiness and the ugliness associated with it.
How's business?
Business good, thank God.
We were talking on the phone yesterday. This has kind of been a silver lining for you. I mean, something good has come out of something bad. Certainly people are coming to support you, and that's meant more people in and out of Nosh and coming to see you and coming to say hi. So at the end of the day, I mean, whoever did this really didn't come out on top.
No, and you know, it's nice that the community, again, is rallying and coming together. And that says a lot about Albuquerque and the people in the city.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all. Let's talk about the investigation. You've been working with investigators on trying to figure out who did this, including the FBI now? Is that, what kind of conversations have you had with law enforcement?
I'm not really in a position to comment any further than they're investigating.
Yeah.
And it will be treated as a hate crime.
At the very least, so they were on the streets and they were dusting for prints, we know that. And that was quite an undertaking, because the last time you were hit, those stickers with those slurs were not only put on your door, but like we saw in that story, all up and down the street. It got worse the second time. Did that shock you?
Yes, that extended up, you know, a few blocks up the road.
As far as feeling safe where you are right now, I ask you the same question every time we talk. Are you scared?
No, I'm not scared. At times I get a little unsettled, but I'm not scared.
I would like to use part of the morning to talk about the kind of food you serve. I've never been there. I can't wait to try some of your delicacies. But what do you serve at Nosh, and what are some of your favorites?
We have traditional Jewish cuisine: matzo ball soup, kugel, chopped liver, knish. We make all our own pastrami and corned beef. We make rye bread and challah, arugula pastries, black and white cookies, traditional Jewish fare. And then we have turkey and tuna, things like that. But it's traditional, just Jewish delicatessen cuisine.
And what inspired you to open Nosh in this particular location, or to open at all?
I was I had just closed my last restaurant and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I lost my father and my little brother to leukemia. And so I kind of I was thinking maybe, my dad always said, you know what, you always go back to your roots, always go back to your roots. And I thought, well, what could I do? And I decided, you know what, I'm going to open a Jewish deli. There wasn't one in Albuquerque. And I felt there was a void to be filled.
So this is kind of, this whole thing is in memorial to your father and your
my brother.
brother.
Yeah, and to my roots.
Are you the cook
They're all my recipes, but I have a great
You're
staff.
you're kind of like a one-woman
I
chef.
have a phenomenal staff.
Good.
And very diversified staff. And, you know, we're like one big family, and together we work, you know, as a team, and we get it done.
What has your staff said? You know, going back to Caleb's question about do you feel safe, have you had these conversations with your own staff, making sure that while they're there working, that they're feeling safe as well?
Yes, and you know, law enforcement has, you know, educated us on to just be aware of your surroundings. You know, if you see anything out of the norm, make a log. We have a log book. Write it down. If anything looks strange, you know, take mental note, and, you know, always be aware of everything around you, and try to take a proactive stance rather than a reactive.
If you have a message to the people of Albuquerque, a lot of people have come together to support you, not only in Albuquerque, but they've driven from other cities nearby to come visit Nosh. What would you want to say to the community tonight?
I thank you for everything that you've done for me, and just that you keep supporting Nosh, and, you know, don't give up, you know, on the community and on everybody just coming together and, you know, show love.
Well, we appreciate your entrepreneurial spirit in our community, and we appreciate what you do. And thank you for being a guest with us this morning. We've appreciated talking to you. And just because we can, let's plug Nosh. It's in Hill on Central?
Amherst and Silver.
Amherst and Silver. I'm glad you corrected me. So take a visit, have some lunch, have some dinner. Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to tackle several topics, including a showdown at the Roundhouse over the state's budget.
Plus, we talk one-on-one with APD's newly appointed police chief, plus the story of a choice no woman should have to face, be a mom or keep your job. That's next.
And thank you again for joining us. This is Eye on New Mexico.
We had a busy week in news, and we're going to take a look at all the big stories that dominated the headlines this week.
Let's start on the legislature front. With less than a week left in this year's legislative session, there's still no agreement in sight on a state budget.
The only business that absolutely must get done isn't getting done. Here's Stu Dyson.
Lawmakers in the House listening to poetry this morning. These are the elected representatives of the people who can't come to an agreement on the budget. The clock is ticking, but there's time for poetry.
We thank you. We bless you.
In the Senate, prayer, and they're going to need it. Now they've got to come up with a budget. In the last few days of a 30-day session, a massive and complex $6 billion task. Senator John Arthur Smith chairs the Senate Finance Committee.
Completely different from what I've observed in my 26 years up here. This is the first time that I can recall that the House has not been able to lift a budget over to the Senate.
Senator Peter Worth has been here 10 years.
The Senate is now going to kind of take over the budget process, and we've got a budget bill on our side, and we're going to have those discussions and see whether we can reach consensus to move a budget bill back to the House.
The governor, meanwhile, remains optimistic.
I think we're going to hopefully come out with a really good budget. We've been negotiating, and hopefully our kids end up winning at the end of the day in reference to that budget, and our economic development proposals.
So the poetry and the ceremonies and the gridlock continues, and the clock is ticking.
And the pressure really is on, because in New Mexico we alternate whether we have a 30-day session or a 60-day session. This year it's a 30-day session, so the time frame to get all this business done is a very short time frame, and then we let our legislators go home to their home communities to get back to their work and back to their families. So the time constraints are serious ones. I thought Stewart did a good job of pointing out that we're really taking up a lot of time on the floor, not doing the main purpose of this session, which is the budget.
Exactly. And not only is this a short session, a 30-day session, there's very little time left in this session.
Less than a week. Usually what happens if they don't complete all their business, or if they don't reach a budget deal, is that we're going to have to do a special session. The governor would call a special session, and then they all come back to Santa Fe to try to hammer out the business that they couldn't do in the first normal session.
Just that sight of the poetry and,
Right.
and the prayers.
Yeah.
Kind of irritating when you think about the fact that stuff's not getting
I
done.
can see why people at home would be irritated. The other big story, after nearly half a year of speculation, Albuquerque's mayor chose the man to lead the Albuquerque Police Department.
He chose Gordon Eden, someone who is no stranger to law enforcement in New Mexico. Right now, he's the cabinet secretary for the state's public safety department.
Our Tom Joel sat down with Gordon Eden Friday evening.
It happened very fast for me. Yes. That's the only response I have for you, Tom, is that it did happen really fast for me, too.
Why this job at this stage in your life?
Why now, this time? If you look at the history through the chiefs, normally they pick from internal. And if you go and you look at the wall of the chiefs, it's very rare that they get an opportunity to have somebody from the outside come in.
Do you think the Albuquerque Police Department has a culture problem?
I think that's a really hard question for me to answer. I don't know if it's a culture problem. I think sometimes people forget why. Why did you become a police officer? Why did you become a firefighter? And I think that what we have to do is we have to remember that we have to stay grounded in those principles. It doesn't matter what's on the side of your door. It doesn't. It's matter what's inside the car.
Eden says he's concerned about cops who leave APD when they should have years ahead of them. He wants to change that.
What has happened? What's the difference when you came on 20 years ago, and what was the difference when you left?
You have a 13-page resume. You've had a lot of jobs. How long are you willing to commit to this job?
I told the mayor I'd be with him till the very, very end. And that's my commitment to the mayor. I think everybody knows that he's term limited himself, and he will have all 4 years of me. And maybe if a new mayor comes in, they will like what they see in me, and I will continue to be there.
During the last 3 years, cops have been working without a contract. Eden told me he's already talked to the mayor about coming up with a contract that works for everyone.
I think everybody needs to remember that contracts require negotiation. And I think that's what we have to be able to do.
This is a big job. A lot of us will be watching you carefully. Are you nervous?
I'm not nervous. I'm confident that I have the skills to make this happen. I'm confident that I have the leadership ability to make it happen. I think what happens with any good leader, it's who you surround yourself with.
Eden, without even hesitating, has an exceptional resume. He has lots of experience. When I met him, he was the U.S. Marshal over New Mexico, appointed by the President of the United States at the time was George Bush. And then in the current capacity, we know him as the DPS cabinet secretary, and state police has had a lot of high-profile things that we've had to work with Secretary Eden on. So this pick wasn't a huge surprise, at least for me, because of the quality and the length of Gordon Eden's resume.
And it is preferable, a promotion within New Mexico law enforcement, to keep folks in the state working here. The one thing that really struck me in that interview was when he said, you know, that talk about getting back to principles and to remembering why we became law enforcement officers, why we're police officers, that's a really important thing to inject back into the APD culture. I think that was pretty interesting.
I think you're right. I think when you remember what in your heart led you to this particular career path, helps you become a better police officer, a better reporter, a better firefighter, when you remember what it was that drove you into that profession to begin with.
And I think that concept can resonate with anyone in any position. I was just thinking, and you mentioned it just now, you know, we have a job where we hit the streets, where we're stressed, we do a lot of stuff out in the community just like police officers do, and we do have to kind of take ourselves back to that place where we remind ourselves why we're doing it and why we're enjoying being so tired sometimes.
Tom makes a good point. He mentioned that we're going to be watching Gordon Eden very closely, yes, and he will be under the microscope. He's going to be under our microscope as members of the media in this community, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 4 years. Of course, we hope that only good things happen over at APD.
Absolutely.
Well, last week, our Four on Your Side team broke a big story that spawned a national debate.
The woman you're about to meet says her bosses in southern New Mexico fell short again and again and fired her simply for trying to be a mom while working for her country.
Four on Your Side investigator Ryan Luby has this story from the border.
Nowhere else is the line so clear, where two worlds have met in newsworthy ways for decades, where we as a country pay people to keep tabs on who comes and who goes.
It's just something that always interested me.
People like Sophia Cruz, who gave up her job at the Santa Fe New Mexican to work the front line in the Border Patrol near Lordsburg.
It's never the same. You can go one day from driving down the road to seeing a vehicle, jumping out of your car and chasing somebody, or going on a 14-mile hike.
But now Sophia's life's not the same in a different way. This past spring, the agency fired her after it gave her a choice.
It's either you be a Border Patrol agent or you nurse your daughter and be a mom. Those are your two options.
You see, Sophia fought with the agency ever since she gave birth to baby Elena and returned from maternity leave, ever since she asked to participate in the agency's lactation support program, and ever since she needed to work light duty so she could use a breast pump and follow the regimented schedule her doctor set up for her.
Because the less you pump or less you nurse, the less your milk you're going to produce.
Doctor's advice, doctor's orders for a full year.
Because I didn't want anything to hinder the milk supply of my child. That was my daughter's only source of food.
Yet Sophia says the agency failed her, blurred the lines on its own program by not routinely giving her the adequate space and time she needed to pump and store her milk. And even though Sophia's doctor said she simply must avoid any type of altercation, working a night shift, and restrictive clothing, including a protective vest for that full year, her boss said, "We need you back on full duty," and said she could either resign or return to full duty. Well, officially, the Border Patrol fired Sophia for refusing to retake a firearms test. But she says her bosses never set it up. Even if they had, she says they never bought her a new vest that could fit the new shape of her body after giving birth. Because in order to take the test, agents have to wear a vest.
I think the issue was that they always approached this as Agent Cruz wanting special treatment.
El Paso labor attorney Ray Martinez recently fought for Sophia in an arbitration hearing.
I think basically the evidence and the testimony that was presented in this case laid out pretty clearly that they treated her differently. They treated her negatively.
Because fact is, Sophia wants to be back on the front line.
Yes, I do.
And with baby number 2 on the way, she wants to make sure her employer walks the line. It's set up for new mothers and set up for itself.
All I wanted to do was nurse my daughter. And all I wanted to do was be a mom and an agent. I didn't know that, you know, hey, when you become a Border Patrol agent, you can't have a family.
On the border, Ryan Luby, Four on Your Side.
The Border Patrol will not discuss this case because it's in litigation, but in a statement, the agency says in part that it is dedicated to the health and well-being of all its employees and is constantly looking for programs and initiatives that positively impact their work environment. The lactation support program is one such program. And Caleb, you know, this story really had a lot of people, not just in New Mexico, but across the country talking, because any mother could relate to this woman.
Absolutely. It's something that you just see as a mom, and I would imagine, and just say, what would I do in that situation?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. I was also surprised on KOB.com, we get a lot of people that sort of debate and talk about the stories that we do, right. And a lot of people were concerned about just about her validity, and we're really debating whether she had a good reason to need to breastfeed at work. It's been an interesting debate.
And it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together and what happens with it.
Ryan did a good job on this story.
Absolutely.
Well, also this week, more allegations of torture and abuse at the controversial Tierra Blanca Ranch.
Our Four on Your Side team broke this story last fall when about a dozen teens came forward with claims that staff at the Sierra County Ranch were beating them, starving them, shackling their arms and feet, all in the name of discipline.
So-called discipline. My Four on Your Side team uncovered a lawsuit filed by the family of a boy who died on that ranch, Bruce Stager was in the bed of a pickup truck on the ranch when it overturned on a dirt road. Now, that crash killed Bruce. His parents have since looked into the ranch, and what they discovered led them to filing this lawsuit. Take a look. More claims of torture. This lawsuit alleges Bruce Stager was forced to eat horse dung and had jalapeno juice poured into his eyes. The suit says on one occasion, Bruce was handcuffed and shackled and carried from a pole by his bound hands and feet as one would carry a large dead animal. The lawsuit names the ranch's owner, Scott Chandler, as the man responsible for the abuse and the torture. Now, last October, I confronted Chandler about multiple claims that he and his staff are abusive. My case file on this story is about this thick with allegation after allegation after allegation of children who attended TBR who say that when they were at your facility, you and others abused them.
I'm sorry they felt that way, but they were not abused.
Why would so many children from different times who weren't even there at the same time all have the same story?
I don't think there is that many.
From yours.
I think, it's all being very exaggerated and blown out of proportion.
Tierra Blanca is a remote ranch in Sierra County. Scott Chandler claims he rehabilitates troubled youth, but the lawsuit states Chandler seduces parents to send their kids to Tierra Blanca to live responsible lives. But instead, the boys are subjected to abuse and humiliation. Our foreigner side investigation revealed nobody on Chandler's staff is trained to work with at-risk youth, and there are no therapists or counselors on hand. Some teens have come to Chandler's defense. Others have said living on the ranch was like living in hell. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are out of time. Be sure to join me tonight for KOB Eyewitness News 4 at 5, and again after the Olympics.